You can live beside someone for years, eat breakfast with them, fall asleep inches from them, share bills, dreams, and grief, and never realize they're quietly building another life behind your back. I learned this the day my husband walked through our door, sun-kissed from a business trip, and I asked one simple question that made him go white. "Do you know what illness she has?" His panic was instant. His hands shook. He bolted for a clinic before I'd even put the knife down. There was no illness, but he didn't know what I knew. Not yet. Before we continue, thank you for joining me in sharing stories. Please consider hit like, comment where you are watching from, and subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more families who need to hear this. My name is Maya Carter, and for 11 years I believed I was married to a man who loved me in the quiet, ordinary ways that matter most. The kind of love built in small kitchens with shared grocery lists, mismatched mugs, and silly arguments about which couch throw looked less grandma-ish. I thought my marriage to Noah Carter was the steady kind, the dependable kind. We met on a wet Seattle morning at Pine and Steam Cafe in Capitol Hill. I had just landed a job with a nonprofit that helped refugee families transition into Washington state, and exhaustion was practically stitched beneath my eyes. I ordered a latte, blinked twice, and a barista accidentally handed me a black coffee instead. Before I could correct it, the man behind me smiled and said, "That one's mine, but you look like you need it more." It wasn't a pickup line. His smile reached his eyes. Soft, genuine, the kind that invited trust. I laughed, handed it back, and somehow we talked for 20 minutes. Long enough that both our coffees went lukewarm. His name was Noah, 27, working in corporate sales, running late in the way that didn't stress him anymore. He listened when I talked about my job. Really listened, something rare in a world where most people only wait to speak. 2 days later, he showed up at my office with a latte and his number written on a napkin. That was Noah then. He was the man who texted to make sure I got home safely after meeting friends, who remembered that my mom liked lemon biscotti and brought her some the first time he met her, who braved adoption shelters with me when we found Ginger, the orange tabby who glared at everyone but him. We dated for 2 years, weaving our lives through Sunday trips to farmers markets, late-night ramen in Capitol Hill, and weekend hikes through the Olympic Peninsula, both of us underprepared with cheap backpacks and a questionable sense of direction. We got lost almost every time and laughed like it made us invincible. Noah proposed one quiet Wednesday evening while we were doing dishes together. No big spectacle, just him turning to me with soapy hands and saying, "I want to do this forever, Maya." I said yes instantly. We married at Gasworks Park on a mild September day. My sister, Natalie, cried through the entire ceremony. My mother dabbed at her eyes with tissues. My father looked at Noah like he'd won the son-in-law lottery. We honeymooned in Cannon Beach, rented a little cottage with driftwood furniture, and returned home with sunburns and plans for our future. Our first apartment together was a 1-bedroom on Capitol Hill, tiny kitchen, unpredictable heat, a balcony big enough for exactly one plant, which I managed to kill. We didn't have much, but the life felt solid. Ours. Real. We had rituals we never skipped. Noah wrote me a handwritten card every anniversary. I baked his grandmother's lemon cake for his birthday. Ginger always slept between us, her furry dictatorship unquestioned. We talked about kids. Someday, when we had more savings, more space, more time. Someday kept moving farther away, but it felt fine, safe. Then Lila Hayes arrived. He mentioned her casually at first. New account manager on my team, Lila. Sharp. Funny. I smiled, said something encouraging, and kept chopping vegetables. People join teams all the time. I didn't think anything of it, but her name came up again, and again, and again. Lila nailed the pitch. Lila and I grabbed lunch. Lila made everyone laugh today. She's kind of like my work wife. The first time he said that, I laughed. Work wife. Cute. Harmless. except something small and my stomach tightened. Something I pushed aside. Because jealous wives are embarrassing, right? Immature. Insecure. And Noah wasn't the type of man who cheated. That's what I told myself. Over and over. But the changes arrived quietly. He angled his phone away at dinner. He started wearing a new cologne I didn't buy. He joined a gym after years of saying he hated working out. He came home energized, not exhausted after long office days. His stories featured Lila more than anyone else. Still, I told myself I was imagining it. I didn't want to be the paranoid wife. I didn't want to undo our 11-year foundation with insecurity. Our marriage had survived job stress, family arguments, my father's heart scare, my nonprofit paychecks that barely covered rent. We'd been through real storms. What's one coworker? Then one Tuesday evening 3 months ago, Noah came home, practically glowing. "I got it," he said, tossing his briefcase aside. "The Phoenix account. They want me to lead the pitch." He said Phoenix like it was Paris. He showed me his travel schedule, his eyes shining with pride I hadn't seen in a while. "It's 2 weeks," he said. "Full process. Meetings, dinners, the works." 2 weeks felt long, but this was a career move. He'd worked hard for it. I hugged him, excited for him, or at least I thought I was. He said he'd call every night. He said he'd miss me. He said it was work. Important work. I believed him enough to help him pack. But the first warning sign came when I jokingly said, "What if I take time off and go with you?" A tiny flicker crossed his face. Not excitement, not even inconvenience. More like fear. "No," he said too quickly. "It wouldn't work. Meetings run late. You'd be alone in a hotel room. You'd be bored." I apologized for suggesting it, feeling childish and needy. He left that Friday morning before sunrise. Ginger sat by the door after it closed, confused. For the first 3 nights, he called late, tired-sounding, rushed. Then nothing. Texts replaced calls. Then shorter texts. Then none. On night 5, after tossing and turning for hours, I did something I'd never done in our marriage. I called the hotel he'd named. "Sorry," the receptionist said. "No guest by that name." My heart tightened. "Are you sure?" He checked in Friday. No Carter checked in all week. I hung up, palms sweating, and checked every Phoenix Marriott in the area. Nothing. No Noah. No reservation. No conference. I barely slept. At 2 a.m., I opened our joint card app. The transactions weren't in Phoenix. They were in Monterey, California. Sunset Wharf, $210. Harborview Bistro, $168. Seabury Inn, $490. Romance package. Bubbly Plus couples massage. My lungs collapsed. He wasn't working. He wasn't in Phoenix. He wasn't alone. He was on a romantic getaway with Lila Hayes. My hand shook. My stomach dropped. The world tilted. But beneath the pain, something else formed. Clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. I opened a spreadsheet. I documented everything. I became someone else. Someone steady, calculating. Because Noah was coming home in 10 days. And I wasn't going to confront him with tears. I was going to confront him with precision. And one question that would haunt him. I didn't sleep after discovering the Monterey charges. My brain kept replaying the numbers, the restaurant names, the romance package. Every detail felt like a needle under my skin. Ginger curled beside me on the couch, purring softly, unaware the world had tilted off its axis. By morning, I wasn't crying. I wasn't panicking. I was planning. The first thing I did was gather every financial statement from the past year. Noah was careful, but not careful enough. A dozen Monterey charges linked to the same week. 2 suspicious charges from months earlier at a boutique hotel in Portland. Flowers purchased at a downtown shop I'd never heard of. An Uber receipt to an address I didn't recognize. I searched it. Queen and Seattle. An apartment building. My heart thudded. I opened Noah's desk drawer, rummaging through receipts, tax forms, warranties, nothing. Then I remembered something. Noah always hid things in plain sight, usually behind boring adult paperwork. I pulled the stack of old insurance documents out of the drawer and flipped through them. There it was, a manila folder labeled Queen and Renewal Options. My hands shook as I opened it. A lease agreement. Queen and Terrace, Unit 302. Leased to Noah Carter and Lila Hayes. Move-in date, December 5th. Term, 24 months. Security deposit, $6,200. First and last month's rent, $8,400. New furniture receipts stapled to the back. A new couch, a dining table, a bedroom set. Paint samples labeled soft dove gray and ocean glass green. Notes in Lila's handwriting. This color feels calming for the bedroom. Love this table for hosting. We should get the rug from Westbridge. I sat there, staring at the evidence of a life they were building. A home I wasn't meant to know about. A space they chose together. A new beginning they were preparing as if I were just some temporary tenant about to be moved out. I hadn't cried yet. That scared me more than anything. My phone buzzed. Noah, morning babe. Meeting soon. Will call you later. Love you. A casual lie. An easy lie. Sent from a bed that wasn't mine. I took a breath and responded. Love you too. Then I put my phone down and let the anger settle into something colder. Resolve. Over the next 2 days, I became someone I barely recognized. Someone calm, calculating, and painfully precise. I logged into our shared iCloud, something Noah clearly forgot existed. He deleted most of his texts from his phone, but not from the cloud backups. There they were, 18 months of messages. At first they were professional, dry, harmless. Then they weren't. Midnight conversations. Compliments that crossed boundaries. Hidden flirting disguised as inside jokes. Plans to unwind after a long day. Emojis that looked harmless until you knew what they meant. And then, 7 months ago, Lila, wish we could take a trip somewhere, just us. No pretending. Noah, someday soon. I promise. Lila, after the holidays? Noah, yes. By then, everything will be ready. I kept scrolling. 5 months ago. Noah, she's been distant. I think she knows something. Lila, does it matter? We'll be together soon. Noah, I hate lying, but she wouldn't understand. Lila, she doesn't need to. Not until it's done. Every word felt like a punch. But I forced myself to read all of it. Every promise. Every plan. Every lie. Then I found the texts from the day I miscarried. The day I'd sat alone in the ER at Harborview Medical Center, clutching my stomach, crying into my sweatshirt, calling him 17 times. The day he was unreachable. The day he was with her. Lila, 11:23 a.m. This view is perfect. Can't believe we still have 5 days left. Noah, 11:31 a.m. I never want it to end. Real life is going to feel awful when we go back. Lila, 11:45 a.m. We could make this real life, you know. The apartment. The future. Us. Noah, 11:52 a.m. Soon. After the holidays. I swear. Lila, 12:03 p.m. Love you. Noah, 12:07 p.m. I love you too. Timestamps matter. At 12:15 p.m., I called him and he answered. Maya, I'm in the middle of something. Can this wait? I had whispered, it can wait, even though it couldn't. I closed the laptop and sat very still. This was no affair of opportunity. No spontaneous romance. This was an orchestrated exit, a conscious unraveling of my life. A slow, deliberate betrayal. That was the moment something inside me hardened into steel. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't plead. I would act. On day 10 of his trip, I woke at 3 a.m. with a thought so sharp it sliced through my exhaustion. One question. One surgical strike. A question that didn't accuse, didn't demand, didn't explain. A question that would let his guilt do the work. I whispered it into the dark, testing the tone. Soft, casual, deadly. Do you know what illness she has? Perfect. By day 15, when Noah came home, I was ready. The apartment was spotless. His favorite pasta simmered on the stove. I wore the navy dress he loved. A picture of normalcy. He walked in smiling, sunburnt, relaxed, the glow of Monterey still on his skin. He hugged me tightly. God, how strange it felt. He smelled like ocean air and expensive resort detergent. How was Phoenix? I asked lightly. Exhausting, he sighed. Back-to-back meetings. A clean lie delivered without a tremor. I asked questions, nodded like the doting wife, all while watching him unpack clothes that reeked not of conference rooms, but seaside humidity. Then, while he tossed his suitcase on the bed, I said, I'm sure Lila was a big help. He froze, just for a fraction of a second. But I saw it. A glitch. A crack. Yeah, he said. She did good work. Too casual. Too measured. I walked to the kitchen, picked up a knife, started chopping vegetables. Slowly, evenly. He stood in the doorway watching me, trying to gauge how much I knew. Hey, Maya, what did you mean earlier? I didn't turn. Instead, softly, I asked the question I'd waited 5 days to deliver. Do you know what illness she has? He went white. His bag slipped from his shoulder and crashed onto the floor. What? His voice was barely a sound. Lila, I said calmly. The illness. I assumed she told you, considering how much time you spent together. He swallowed. Hard. Maya, what? What are you talking about? His voice splintered. I didn't answer, just kept chopping. You should probably get tested, I said quietly. The clinic on Pike is open until 7. The knife hit the board in steady, rhythmic beats. He grabbed his phone with shaking hands. Why? Why would you say something like that? He stammered. Did she, Maya, what's wrong with her? I didn't answer. He dialed Lila. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. A third time. Voicemail. His panic boiled over. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Maya, please tell me what's going on. What illness? I finally turned, wiped my hands on a towel, and said, You should go get tested. Then we'll talk. He stared at me like the ground was crumbling. Then he bolted. The front door slammed, so hard the frame shook. The building's stairwell echoed with his frantic footsteps. And then, silence. Only when the quiet was absolute did I let my shoulders loosen. The first move was complete. While he sat in a clinic imagining every catastrophic outcome, I opened the bottle he'd been saving for a special occasion. A Pinot Noir from Oregon. I poured a heavy glass. Then I laid out everything on the couch. Every receipt, every screenshot, every text. Some people think revenge is loud. Mine was methodical. He would come home, not to chaos, but to truth. All of it. Evidence he'd never be able to outrun again. And this time he wouldn't get to choose the narrative. I would. Noah came home from the clinic 4 hours later, looking like someone had drained every drop of blood from his body. He stood in the doorway, gripping the frame as if he needed it to stay upright. There's nothing wrong with me. His voice was thin, quiet. They ran everything. Full panel. Blood work. Screening. All of it. He swallowed hard. I'm clean. I looked at him from the couch, wine glass in hand, the lamp casting a dim gold glow over the living room. I took a slow sip. That's good news, I said. Noah stepped inside but didn't go far. His shoulders sagged. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes swollen and bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't breathed properly in hours. Is it? He whispered. Maya, why did you say that? Why would you make me think something was wrong with her? I set my glass down gently. Because, I said, you needed to feel it. He blinked. Confused. Afraid. Feel what? The panic, I said. The sick dread of consequences. The fear that something irreversible is coming for you. I needed you to feel, for a few hours, what I felt for 8 days straight. Noah stared at me like I'd just spoken another language. What happened 8 days ago? He said weakly. I exhaled slowly, then picked up my phone from the coffee table, opened the email I'd received from Sarah, and held up the Instagram screenshot. It was the picture from Monterey, the picture that changed everything. He stared at it, frozen. His face twitched, shock, realization, then resignation. He recognized it, and he knew the lie was over. Monterey, I said softly, not Phoenix. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. Maya, I can explain. Don't, I cut in. Don't embarrass us both by pretending you were there for work. I know everything. I reached for the folder on the couch, the one with the printed receipts, the screenshots, the highlighted texts. I pulled out the first sheet. The Seabury Inn, I read. Romance package. Bubbly and a couple's massage. Charged to our joint credit card. I laid it on the coffee table. Dinner at Harborview Bistro. Candlelit. Reservations for 2. Another sheet. Another impact. And this one, midnight text messages to Lila from the balcony of your room. The same night you told me you were too exhausted for a call. I kept stacking them like cold little truths. Noah slowly sank into the armchair like his body couldn't hold itself up. Maya, please, I'm not finished. He closed his mouth. I picked up the printed texts. You told her our marriage has been dead for years. I looked directly at him. Our marriage. The one where you wrote me handwritten cards every anniversary. Where you cried at dinner 3 months ago talking about how grateful you were for me. That marriage. He bowed his head. His silence was an answer. I reached for the hardest thing next. The thing that had kept me awake at night. 2 weeks before your trip, I said quietly, I took a pregnancy test. His head snapped up. A pregnancy. It was positive. His breath caught like he'd been punched. I was going to tell you that Friday, I said. I planned everything. I bought sparkling cider. I looked up the little baby shoes you'd love. My voice wavered, but I didn't break. But Thursday night you got your emergency call about Phoenix. Remember? You asked if we could push our dinner to when you got back. He covered his mouth with both hands. Maya. I kept going. 5 days after he left, I started bleeding. Heavy. Sudden. Terrifying. I called you 17 times, I said. 17. He squeezed his eyes shut. Tears slipped out. You answered twice. Both times annoyed. Both times asking if whatever I needed could wait. His breath came out in a shudder. I didn't know, he whispered. God, Maya. I didn't know. You didn't know, I said, because you didn't answer your phone. I reached for the most damning texts of all. The ones with timestamps from the exact hour I was in the ER. At 11:23 a.m., she texted you about how perfect the view was. At 11:31 a.m., you told her you never wanted the trip to end. At 11:45, she said you didn't have to go back to real life. At 11:52, you promised her soon. At 12:03, she told you she loved you. At 12:07, you told her you loved her too. I held the pages out. These messages happened while I was in a hospital bed losing our baby. Noah's face twisted into devastation. He bent forward, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face. No, he said through trembling fingers. No, no, no. Maya, if I had known. You didn't know, I snapped, because you were too busy building a new life with her. He flinched hard. I stood, my hand shaking now, but from anger, not grief. You weren't just cheating. You weren't just lying. You were planning to leave. I reached for the lease agreement, the queen and apartment, and threw it onto the coffee table. He stared at it like it was a burning fuse. It's a 2-bedroom, I said. A 1.5 year lease. Signed by you and her. Furniture already ordered. Paint colors picked out. Rent paid ahead. He stared at the papers, chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Maya, I. His voice broke. How did you even find this? He whispered. You got sloppy. I shrugged. Credit card receipts. Email confirmations. Hidden folders. You underestimated me or overestimated yourself. He sat in silence, crushed under the weight of his own choices. You meant to leave me after the holidays, I said. Right? That was the plan. No answer. Which was an answer. You were going to stand in this living room after Christmas, I said, and tell me some story about how we'd grown apart, how it was mutual, how you needed space. He finally looked up, his face blotchy, red, streaked with tears. I didn't want to hurt you, he choked. You already did, I said. You just didn't see it because you were too busy looking at her. The silence that followed was suffocating. He was shaking, his breath uneven. Finally, he asked, voice barely a whisper, What happens now? I pointed to the door. Now you leave. His eyes widened. Maya, no. No, please. Let's talk. We can work through this. There is nothing to work through. His desperation spiraled. Where am I supposed to go? He asked. I don't care. I didn't raise my voice. It was worse than yelling. Your brother. A hotel. Or the apartment you already rented with her. He staggered to his feet. Tried calling Lila. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. A third time. Voicemail. I watched him make 23 calls, pacing the living room in circles, panic building with each unanswered ring. Maya, he whispered, eyes glassy with fear. She's not answering. Something's wrong. Maybe she's busy, I said flatly. He tried again, and again. Nothing. Midnight came. Then 12:30. Then 1 a.m. Still nothing. Finally, he grabbed a few clothes, shoved them into a bag, and left. I listened as he called his brother from the hallway, asking if he could crash there. When the door closed, the apartment fell silent. My apartment. My silence. And I felt nothing, except clarity. The next morning, he tried again. 17 missed calls. For voicemails. Then, at 10 a.m., a knock. I opened the door. He stood there looking gutted. Maya. His voice was ragged. She's gone. I sipped my coffee. Okay. She packed a bag last night. Her roommate said she left. She won't answer me. She won't talk to me. She just disappeared. He looked at me, desperate for answers. I don't know where she is, he said. Do you? I looked at him steadily. I have no idea, Noah. She's your girlfriend. I assumed you'd know. His face crumpled. It wasn't like that, he whispered. Really? I said, you signed a lease with her. You bought furniture. You planned a life. What would you call it? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. You have 10 minutes to collect the rest of your things, I said. He stepped past me, hollow and broken, gathering shirts, toiletries, whatever hadn't been moved already. He paused at the door. I'm going to fix this, he said. I'm going to fix us. There is no us anymore, I replied. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Then he left. He didn't know the truth yet, that I knew exactly where Lila had gone, or what I had done, or why she vanished so suddenly. But he would, very soon, and he wouldn't be ready. Noah had no idea that while he was spiraling over Lila's disappearance, I already knew exactly where she'd gone, and why she left without saying a word. Because 3 days before Noah returned home, I found something that changed everything. It wasn't in his texts. It wasn't in his receipts. It wasn't even in the lease agreement. It was on social media. I had already exhausted Noah's accounts, and Lila's profiles were locked down. But her last name, Hayes, was distinct enough that a simple Google search led me to a wedding registry from 8 years ago. Her husband's name was Evan Hayes. My breath stalled. I clicked his Instagram. Public. Wide open. Page after page of photos of a family, so picturesque it felt like a knife twisting deeper into the wound. Lila, Evan, and their children. 2 girls, maybe 6 and 8, smiling at birthday parties, posing at the beach, eating ice cream in the backyard, trick-or-treating in matching costumes. 3 weeks ago, they had posted a family pumpkin patch photo. The caption read, "Fall traditions with my favorite people." My jaw clenched, my stomach rolling with nausea. Lila wasn't just cheating on her partner. She was a wife. She was a mother. She was risking the emotional stability of 2 young children for my husband. I stared at those little girls. Gap-toothed smiles, soft curls, eyes bright in a way that only children untouched by betrayal can be. They had no idea their entire world was about to implode. Because of her. Because of him. And for a moment I felt something unexpected. Not revenge. Not rage. But protective sorrow for those children. Those innocent girls. They didn't deserve the chaos Lila had been orchestrating with Noah. They didn't deserve to spend Christmas in a divided home while their mother played out a fantasy life in a queen and apartment. Evan didn't deserve it either. A man who posted pictures of pancake breakfasts every Sunday, who proudly shared his daughter's school projects, who wrote captions like, "These 3 keep me grounded." What he didn't know was that the woman he'd pledged forever to had spent the last 18 months erasing him from her future plans. While he tucked his daughters into bed, she was texting my husband about how she never wanted their trip to end. I watched a video of Evan reading bedtime stories to one of his girls, her tiny head resting on his shoulder, long eyelashes fanned across her cheek. It broke something open inside me. This would destroy him. It would destroy them. But he deserved the truth. So did they. After hours of agonizing, sitting with my knees pulled to my chest, my laptop glowing in the dark, I made a decision that would unravel everything. I created a new email. Anonymous. Untraceable. Emotionless. Subject: "I'm sorry you have to find out this way." I attached everything. Screenshots of Noah and Lila's texts. Photos from Monterey. The Queen and lease agreement. Receipts. Date-stamped proof from their messages planning their future. I hesitated for 5 full minutes, shaking so badly I had to steady my hands against the desk. Then I clicked send. It was done. Lila didn't disappear because she got scared of Noah. She disappeared because her husband received the truth. Because the life she'd built on lies had been yanked out from under her. And I wasn't sorry. Not even a little. 3 days after Noah moved out, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. "Is this Maya Carter?" The voice was rough, strained. "Yes." "This is Evan Hayes." My chest tightened. He inhaled sharply. "I think we need to talk about our spouses." We agreed to meet the next day at a quiet coffee shop in Ballard, neutral territory for both of us. I arrived early, nerves buzzing under my skin. When he walked in, I recognized him instantly from the photos. Medium build, soft brown hair, kind eyes now rimmed red like he hadn't slept in days. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. His voice trembled despite his attempt at calm. "I know this is strange." "No stranger than anything else lately," I said quietly. He nodded, staring at the coffee between his hands as if trying to anchor himself. "Did you send the email?" he asked. I hesitated, then nodded. "I'm sorry," I said. "I know it wasn't my place." "Don't apologize," he said immediately. "I needed to know." He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. "I spent all night reading their messages," he whispered. "All night trying to understand how someone I trusted could live like this behind my back." His eyes filled with pain. "She told me it was a girl's trip to Carmel," he said. "Said she'd be with her college friends. She sent pictures every day. Ones she'd taken months earlier with the girls, pretending everything was normal." My stomach twisted. "They coordinated it," he continued. "The timing, the lies, they covered for each other." He laughed bitterly. "She even posted old Instagram stories of our kids, so I wouldn't worry." A wave of nausea washed over me. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. He shook his head. "No, I'm sorry. You were dealing with the same betrayal. Maybe worse. His throat tightened. How long have you known? 8 days, I said. He closed his eyes. 4 days for me. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our broken marriages settling between us. They signed a lease together, he said suddenly. I know, I whispered. She withdrew $15,000 from our savings, he continued. Said it was for a teaching certification program. I didn't question her. I trusted her. My jaw clenched. She used our daughter's college fund, he whispered, for a life with your husband. I blinked back tears. Those little girls. They deserved a mother who put them first. Not this. I filed for divorce yesterday, Evan said. My lawyer said her financial deception alone gives me a strong case. I nodded slowly. I'm meeting an attorney next week, I said. I've documented everything. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since he walked in. What if, Evan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. What if we file on the same day? A united front, a way of taking back some power. The idea surprised me, but then it didn't. 2 betrayed spouses, 2 broken homes, 2 people who deserve truth over carefully constructed lies. I like that, I said quietly. We exchanged information, lawyers, timelines, copies of evidence. Everything we'd need to ensure neither Noah nor Lila could twist their narrative into something softer, cleaner, easier to defend. As we stood outside the cafe preparing to leave, Evan said, My girls, they're good kids. They didn't deserve this. And neither did you. I swallowed hard. You didn't either. For the first time, he managed a tired smile. We're going to be okay, Maya, he said. Eventually. Eventually. He walked away, disappearing into the gray Seattle fog. I stood there a moment longer, breathing in the sharp early winter air, feeling something shift inside me, something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not peace exactly, but the possibility of it, the beginning of something like strength. Later that day, I texted Noah a single sentence. Ask her husband. 10 minutes passed. 20. Then. Noah, what husband? What are you talking about? I didn't reply. Let him find out. Let him realize he wasn't the only one living a double life. Let him realize the woman he'd chosen over me had been choosing someone else. Her family, longer than he knew. Because the one person Noah trusted to build a future with had just torched her entire life to save her own. And he was about to face the fallout. All of it. 3 mornings after I told Noah to ask her husband. I sat in the downtown office of Victoria Nash, the divorce attorney whose reputation alone could make grown executives sweat. Her office was sleek, glass walls, concrete floors, minimalist decor, and the kind of quiet that made you straighten your posture without thinking. Her assistant led me into a private conference room overlooking the Puget Sound. Ferries drifted past in the distance, and the sky had that silver-blue Seattle tint that made everything feel sharper. I set my evidence folder on the table. 63 pages, color-coded, tabbed, organized, undeniable. The door opened. Victoria, mid-40s, razor-blade-sharp, immaculate navy suit, walked in with the calm confidence of someone who wins. Maya Carter, she said, offering her hand. Yes. She sat, slid the folder toward herself, and began flipping through the documents. She didn't make any exaggerated reactions, no wide eyes or dramatic gasps. But with each page, her eyebrows lifted slightly, like she was mentally checking boxes on a list. After 15 silent minutes, she closed the folder gently, folded her hands, and said a single sentence. This, she said, is a divorce attorney's dream. I exhaled for the first time in days. She tapped the folder. You have a documented affair spanning at least 18 months. Misuse of marital funds. A secret apartment lease. Emotional abandonment during a medical emergency. Financial deception. This is, frankly, textbook marital misconduct. Her tone didn't carry pity. It carried certainty. Tell me what you want, she said. The question sat heavy between us. What did I want? I had spent so long reacting to Noah's choices that I hadn't fully allowed myself to imagine what justice looked like for me. I want the apartment, I said. It's in my name, but I want it legally secure. No contest. Victoria nodded. Done. What else? I want every dollar he spent on her reimbursed. Every hotel, every meal, every gift. Absolutely. And I swallowed. I want the truth on record. I don't want him able to tell people that we grew apart or that it was mutual. I want the divorce filed as his fault. Victoria's expression sharpened with something like approval. Then we file for a fault divorce, citing adultery and financial misconduct. We include every receipt, every message, every timestamp. Judges don't take lightly to spouses who drain joint accounts for extramarital partners. She made notes, then looked up again, and we file quickly, before he has a chance to spin this or hide assets. I nodded. Let's do it. And with that, the process began. Over the next weeks, my life became a steady rhythm of documentation, strategy meetings, and meticulous planning. Victoria treated the case with frightening efficiency, assembling exhibits, preparing statements, calculating damages. She said that while Washington was technically a no-fault state, judges still considered evidence of misconduct in asset division, especially when financial abuse was involved. Meanwhile, Noah tried to stop the legal avalanche before it hit him. He showed up at my door one morning at 7:10 a.m., wearing wrinkled jeans, unshaven, desperation clinging to him like static. Maya, please, he said the moment I cracked the door. We don't need lawyers. This doesn't have to be messy. We can talk through this. I leaned against the doorframe. No, Noah. This is already messy. You made it messy. Maya, I made a mistake. Mistakes don't last 18 months. Mistakes don't sign 2-year leases. He winced. I'm sorry, he whispered. You're sorry your life blew up, I said. Not sorry for what you did. He looked shattered. I didn't know about the baby, he choked. My jaw clenched. You didn't know because you didn't answer your phone. He looked away. I would have come home, he whispered. I would have. Would you? I asked. Or would you have told her you needed to step out for a work call? Would you have comforted me in an ER bathroom stall while texting her you loved her? He couldn't look at me. When direct guilt didn't work, he shifted tactics. Predictable, pathetic. He went to my parents. That afternoon, my dad called. His voice shook with controlled anger. Your mother and I just had a very disturbing visit from Noah. I sighed. What did he say? He told us you'd grown distant, that you weren't connecting anymore, that the marriage had problems. I closed my eyes, embarrassed for him. And then my dad continued. He suggested that maybe you both played a part, that he didn't want things to get ugly. I almost laughed. Almost. What did you say? I asked. My dad exhaled sharply. I told him to get out of my house before I dragged him out. My throat tightened. We're behind you, Mom said, joining the call. Whatever you need, financial support, help with moving, space to breathe, you have it. Their certainty steadied me in a way I didn't expect. After we hung up, I sat on the couch and let myself cry. Not from sadness, but from gratitude. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel alone. 3 weeks after my first meeting with Victoria, the divorce papers were officially filed. Fault-based, evidence attached, asset requests clearly outlined. Noah received the petition at his brother's apartment where he'd been staying. He called immediately. 70% of the assets, he shouted, voice cracking. You want 70%. Maya, that's insane. No judge will give you that. I took a breath. Actually, Victoria believes we're being generous. What? The judge will hear about the financial fraud, the pregnancy, the abandonment, the secret lease, the diversion of funds. They might give me more. He went silent. This is vindictive, he muttered. You're trying to punish me. No, I said calmly. I'm making sure you face the consequences you spent 18 months avoiding. He clenched his jaw. You contacted Lila's husband. Yes. He said it as an accusation. I heard it as truth. I gave him the same truth I had, I said. He deserved to know. You destroyed her life, he whispered. She destroyed her own life. You just helped. He didn't respond. He hung up. 2 weeks later, his lawyer responded. A pathetic counterproposal that ignored nearly all terms. Victoria smirked when she read it. Good. This means he's scared. Scared. A guilty man tries to negotiate from ego. A terrified one tries to delay. Sure enough, the lawyer called again the following week. He wants to settle, they said. Victoria negotiated without blinking. The result? A crushing settlement in my favor. 70% of marital assets. My apartment fully awarded to me. Full reimbursement for every dollar Noah spent on Lila. No spousal support. He pays all legal fees. A written statement acknowledging adultery and financial misconduct. When we all met in Victoria's conference room to sign, Noah looked like a shell of the man I once married. He'd lost weight, grown a patchy beard, and his eyes were haunted. He signed every page silently, hands trembling only once, on the line where he admitted fault. When it was over, he set the pen down. I really did love you, he whispered. I know you don't believe that, but I did. I looked at him, and for the first time it didn't hurt. You loved the version of me that didn't ask questions, I said softly. Not the woman standing here. He inhaled shakily. I'm sorry. I nodded. Then I stood up, walked out, and didn't look back. When I stepped outside onto the street afterward, cold January air biting my cheeks, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. A strange, bare, uncertain beginning. But mine. Entirely mine. Evan texted that night. Sign mine today. How are you holding up? I wrote back. It's done. I'm okay. One day at a time. Same here. The girls are adjusting. We're still standing. That counts. It did. More than he knew. And as I looked out over the city lights, reflecting off the bay, I realized something. I wasn't broken. Not anymore. Just rebuilding. Just beginning. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt the faintest flicker of something like hope. I walked home from Victoria's office that day, feeling something I didn't recognize at first. It wasn't joy. It wasn't relief. It wasn't even triumph. It was emptiness, but not the hollow, aching kind I'd lived with for months. It was clean, quiet, uncluttered, like the moment after a storm when all that's left is stillness. I stood on the sidewalk outside my apartment building for a long moment, breathing in the sharp January air, staring up at the windows that now belonged only to me. The weight of 11 years pressed against my ribs, good memories tangled with the bitter ones, until I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Everything looked the same. Nothing felt the same. I walked through the living room, slowly. The couch where Noah had told me he landed the Phoenix pitch. The kitchen where he'd lied about work dinners. The bedroom where he'd packed for Monterey with steady hands and a steady smile. Traces of him lingered everywhere, like fingerprints on glass. And I hated it. Not the memories, those would fade in time, but the presence, the residue. So I grabbed a trash bag and started. Not emotional, not dramatic, just methodical. Noah's leftover shampoo bottles in the bathroom, his old slippers under the bed, the mug he always used for morning coffee, his unused gym bag in the closet, the stack of birthday cards he kept but never reread. I threw them into the bag one by one. By the time I finished, the trash bag was full, and the apartment felt lighter. Still not mine yet, but getting there. That weekend, I boxed up everything Noah hadn't already taken, his books, shirts, baseball caps, the old sweater he insisted on keeping even though it had holes in the sleeves, and left the boxes neatly stacked by the door. He showed up with movers at 10 a.m. sharp. I didn't speak to him. I didn't need to. There were no more arguments to have. No explanations left unsaid. He looked exhausted, his shoulders slumped, his eyes dull. The movers loaded the boxes while he stood by helplessly, a man watching his old life being physically carried out the door. When the last box was gone, he turned to me. Maya, his voice cracked. I know you don't owe me anything, but please believe that I never meant to hurt you like this. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. He waited a few seconds, hoping, then nodded, a broken, hollow gesture, and left. I locked the door behind him, and then I cried, not out of regret. There was nothing left to regret. Not because I missed him, I didn't. Not because I wished things were different, I no longer did. I cried for the girl I'd been 3 months ago, the one who believed her marriage was solid, who believed trust was enough, who believed loyalty was mutual, who believed in someday. That version of me died quietly somewhere between the Monterey receipts and the Queen and lease agreement. I cried for her. Then I wiped my face, washed my hands, and kept going. My mother showed up that evening with Thai takeout and a bag of groceries I didn't need but appreciated anyway. She let herself in with the spare key she'd had since the day I moved in with Noah. When she saw my face, puffy eyes, blotchy cheeks, she didn't ask questions. She just set the food down, wrapped her arms around me, and held me like she used to when I was little. I'm so proud of you, she whispered into my hair. For what? My voice cracked. For surviving something that would have destroyed most people. I didn't feel strong, but I believed her. We ate on the couch in silence. The kind of silence you only get with someone who loves you without condition. She stayed the night, falling asleep on top of the covers next to me like she did when I was a child afraid of thunderstorms. When I woke in the morning, she was already in the kitchen making coffee. Morning, she said gently. I smiled, a small one, but real. 2 weeks after the settlement, my best friend Sarah took a bus from Portland just to spend the weekend with me. When she walked into my apartment, she didn't hug me right away. She just looked at me, really looked, and her expression softened in that way only lifelong friends can manage. You're okay, she said with a kind of awe. I'm getting there, I corrected gently. Good. Because I brought wine, carbs, and righteous fury. We spent the afternoon sprawled across my living room, drinking Pinot Grigio straight from the bottle, and I told her everything, from the Instagram photo to the Queen, and leased to the confrontation to the miscarriage to the settlement. She listened, stone-faced at first, then angry, then sympathetic, then fiercely proud. The miscarriage, she said eventually. Maya, you went through that alone. Why didn't you call me? My throat tightened. I felt stupid, I admitted, like I should have known sooner, like trusting him made me weak. Sarah shook her head. No, he took advantage of your trust. That doesn't make you weak. That makes him a coward. We ordered another bottle of wine, then pizza, then brownies. At one point Sarah said that illness question? Maya, that was, honestly, genius. Terrifying, but genius. I let out a startled laugh. It felt foreign, but good, like my lungs were stretching in ways they hadn't for months. We talked late into the night, and when she left Sunday morning, she hugged me so tightly my ribs ached. You're allowed to feel happy again, she whispered. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Her certainty warmed something in my chest. A month after the divorce, I got a text from Evan. Custody hearing went well. Girls are staying with me for now, trying to take things one day at a time. How are you? I hesitated, not because I didn't want to answer, but because I wasn't used to someone else understanding exactly what I'd lived through. Same here, I wrote. One day at a time. We made plans to meet for coffee the following week. When we met at a little place in Greenwood, he looked better than when I'd last seen him. Not healed, but stitched together enough to stand without wobbling. He told me about the custody arrangements, the girls' questions, their tears, how he'd explain things as gently as he could. They asked if it was their fault, he said, voice tight. That broke me. My heart cracked a little. I'm sorry, I whispered. He nodded. They'll be okay. Kids bend more than they break. We talked for 2 hours about lawyers, coping, the absurdity of betrayal, the strange relief that comes after the chaos. He told me Hazel had sent him 3 letters, emotional, rambling apologies about her journey and mistakes. He burned them. I don't need her reasons, he said. I just need to raise my daughters. I admired that clarity. As we got up to leave, he said, We're going to be okay, Maya. It doesn't feel like it most days, but we will be. And for the first time, I believed him. Life slowly settled into a new rhythm. I went to work. I came home. I made dinner for 1 instead of 2. I slept without waiting for someone else to join me. I learned to enjoy my own company again. Not lonely, just alone. There's a difference. I rearranged the living room, bought a new rug, painted the bedroom a soft gray, donated the couch Noah and I had picked together, and bought a new one, smaller, cozier mine. Piece by piece I reclaimed my space, my life, my future. And one cold February evening, standing at my window overlooking the city, I finally felt it. Peace. Not complete, not permanent, not perfect, but peace. A beginning. A quiet, steady beginning. One night, as I sat reading on my couch, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, Maya. It's James. From your building. We've run into each other a few times in the lobby. A few neighbors are grabbing drinks tomorrow night. Thought you might want to join. No pressure. I stared at the message, surprised. James, the neighbor with the easy smile. The one who always held the elevator for me. The one who said, How are you doing? Like he actually wanted an answer. Drinks. With people. Normal people. Something I hadn't done in months. Maybe I typed. I'll let you know tomorrow. Sounds good, smiley face, he replied. I set my phone down. I didn't know if I'd go. I didn't know if I was ready. But for the first time in a long time, the idea didn't terrify me. It felt possible. Progress, in its smallest form. And sometimes that's enough. I didn't go to the drinks the next night. I stood in front of my closet for 20 minutes, holding a soft blue sweater in one hand and uncertainty in the other, and realized I wasn't ready, not yet. I set my phone down, reheated leftover pasta, and spent the evening watching a documentary about orcas instead. But the message from James lingered in my mind. Not romantic, not suggestive, not intrusive, just kind. It had been a long time since someone offered me something without expecting anything back. The next morning, as I left for work, I ran into him in the elevator. He looked surprised for a half second, then smiled, warm, easy, genuine. Hey, Maya. Didn't see you last night. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. Sorry, I wasn't up for being social. No apology needed, he said. Just glad you're doing okay. We rode down in comfortable silence. When the elevator reached the lobby, he held the door for me and said, Maybe next time. Maybe felt safe. That afternoon at work, my supervisor asked if I wanted to attend a partner organization's spring conference in Tacoma. The old me would have said no. Too exhausted, too overwhelmed, too buried in everything happening at home. But this new version of me, the one learning how to breathe again, said, Yes, I'd love to. A small step, a small yes, but it mattered. The first truly difficult day came 2 weeks later, on a rainy Saturday when the apartment felt too quiet and the hours too long. I tried cleaning, reading, baking. Nothing worked. Eventually, I pulled out the old wooden box I kept under my bed, our wedding memories. I hadn't opened it since the day my life split in two. Inside were our vows, folded neatly. Photos from Gasworks Park. A dried rose from my bouquet. The handwritten note Noah had slipped into my hand before the ceremony that read, There's no one else in the world for me but you. I stared at those words for a long time. Past tense now. Past life. Past promise. I placed the note back in the box, but didn't close it, just yet. I allowed myself to sit with the grief, not the sharp kind anymore, but the dull ache of what once was. The ache that lingers even after betrayal has scorched the good parts one by one. I cried for maybe 10 minutes. Ginger curled at my feet like she knew. Then I closed the box and put it away, not because I wanted to forget, but because I didn't need to keep reopening a wound that was finally starting to scar over. A week later, something unexpected happened. Evan texted, not about lawyers, not about documents, not about the chaos Lila had left behind. Just, the girls made me pancakes this morning. Terrible pancakes, completely inedible, but they were proud. Thought you'd appreciate that. And I did, more than I expected. We fell into an easy rhythm of occasional check-ins. Nothing intense, nothing heavy, just two people navigating similar wreckage, speaking the same language of rebuilding. One afternoon, he sent a photo of a crayon drawing Harper made at school. 4 stick figures, Dad, Maddie, Harper, and what looked like a cat with rainbow stripes. Underneath, Harper had written, "My family is strong." My heart clenched in the most unexpected way. Not painful, not jealous, just warm. "You're doing a good job," I texted back. "Trying," he replied. "Some days feel impossible, but most days feel okay." That's more than I hoped for. I understood that completely. Spring arrived early that year, with shy sunshine and cherry blossoms blooming along the streets in Capitol Hill. I found myself going on longer walks after work. Not because I needed to escape the apartment anymore, but because the air felt fresh in a way it hadn't for months. One sunny Saturday, I stopped at the local farmer's market. I picked up fresh tulips, a loaf of sourdough, and a lemon the size of a softball. Perfect for lemon cake. Not Noah's favorite lemon cake anymore. Mine. The woman at the flower stall smiled at me and said, "These will brighten any room." I smiled back. I know. Walking home with the bouquet in hand, I realized I hadn't thought about Noah in days. Not deeply, not painfully, not with anger. He had become background noise, a closed chapter, a lesson that had already been learned, written and shelved. When I got home, I stuck the tulips in a glass pitcher because my vases were all wrong shapes. They stood bright and unapologetically cheerful on my windowsill, catching the sun in their petals, and I allowed myself to feel what they made me feel. Late. One Saturday, as I stepped out of my apartment to check the mail, I saw James standing at the end of the hallway, fumbling with a package. "Hey," he said, smiling when he saw me. Funny timing. I was actually going to knock. "Oh." My heart did a small, startled flutter. "Yeah," he said, shifting the box under his arm. "Couple neighbors are doing a board game night tomorrow. Very low-key. No pressure. Just thought you might want to come." A few months ago, I would have said no. But now, "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." His smile was soft and surprised, like maybe he didn't expect me to say yes. "Great," he said. "I'll text you the details." I went back inside with my mail and felt something quiet but unmistakable flutter under my ribs. Not excitement exactly, not hope, just the gentle awareness that my life was bigger than what had happened, and that maybe there was room for something new someday. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. The day of board game night, I stood in front of my closet again, this time not with dread but with mild, curious anticipation. I kept it simple. Jeans, a cream sweater, a bit of mascara and a hair clip. A small effort. Just enough. The gathering was warm and chaotic. People laughing too loudly over charades. A mix of snacks on the counter. Mismatched chairs pulled from different apartments. James greeted me with a glass of wine and a smile that looked relieved. "You made it." "I did," I said, surprising myself as much as him. We played games. We talked. I met neighbors whose names I'd seen on mailboxes, but never actually spoken to. At one point during a break, James asked softly, "How have you been feeling?" "Really?" And I surprised myself again. Better than I expected. Good, he said, leaning against the counter beside me. You deserve better. His tone wasn't flirtatious, not heavy, just sincere, the kind of sincerity that feels like a blanket, not a spotlight. Later that night, as I walked back to my apartment, the hallway felt familiar in a new, gentler way. When I closed my door, it didn't echo with emptiness. It felt like mine. Finally mine. A few days later, Evan texted again. How did board game night go? You okay? I smiled at my phone. I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. Glad to hear it. Truly. Then he added, one day you'll look back and realize you rebuilt something stronger than what was taken from you. You already are. His words settled warm in my chest. Not romantic warmth. Just human understanding. The kind that feels like someone holding the edge of the table while you stand up again. And I realized slowly, steadily, that I wasn't rebuilding from ashes. I was rebuilding from foundation. My foundation. By early May, my life had a rhythm again. Morning coffee, walk to work, lunch with coworkers, evening books, fresh flowers every Sunday, and every so often, drinks with neighbors. A text from Evan, a wave from James in the elevator, laughter that didn't feel forced, smiles that didn't feel unnatural. Healing wasn't linear, but it was happening, in small, quiet, steady ways. And the woman who once felt shattered beyond repair was beginning to feel whole again. Not because someone saved her, but because she saved herself. Spring melted into early summer, and with it, the version of myself who once measured days in surviving rather than living. The rhythm I'd built no longer felt delicate or temporary. It felt like mine, earned, deliberate, solid. On a warm June morning, I woke early, sunlight spilling through the curtains I'd finally replaced with ones that actually matched my taste. Ginger stretched on the windowsill, yawning dramatically as if she, too, had survived a personal tragedy. I made coffee, toasted a slice of the sourdough I'd bought from the little bakery on Broadway, and sat by the window watching the city wake up. And it hit me then, quietly but clearly. I felt free. Not free from responsibility or grief or memory. Free from him. Free from the version of myself who'd lived on hope instead of truth. Free from the quiet anxiety of waiting for a lover who'd long since drifted. I wasn't healed completely, no one ever is. But I was living in a life that made sense again. A life I wasn't apologizing for. A life I was choosing. The Tacoma conference came sooner than expected. The flight was short, the hotel modest, but the experience felt enormous to me. The old Maya, the one before betrayal, would have stuck to presentations and mingled politely. The new me sat at round tables, raised my hand during sessions, spoke with confidence about outreach programs, and even exchanged business cards with other organizers. One night, the conference hosted a networking dinner at a rooftop venue overlooking Puget Sound. The air was cool, filled with the scent of sea salt and pine. As I sipped a glass of white wine, listening to colleagues discuss grant proposals, I realized I wasn't thinking about Noah, not wondering what he was doing, not picturing what life with him used to be, not tracing the outlines of scars. He had become insignificant, a chapter ending so far behind me it no longer hurt to touch its pages. Later, walking along the waterfront alone, the ferries drifting across the water like lanterns, I felt something unfamiliar bloom in my chest. Not hope, not excitement, just possibility. Possibility that the world was bigger than one heartbreak, bigger than betrayal, bigger than the small, enclosed life I had once shrunk myself into. When I returned to Seattle, I found a note taped to my door. Hey Maya, we're doing another game night next Friday. Would love to see you there if you feel up for it. James. Simple. Kind. No pressure. No expectation. And instead of hesitation, I smiled. The next Friday I went. This time, walking down the hall, I didn't second-guess my outfit or my presence or my right to be somewhere social. I knocked on the door. Music drifted out, something upbeat. Voices laughed inside. James opened the door with a grin that softened when he saw me. You came. I did, I said. Figured I should defend my charades title. He laughed and stepped aside to let me in. The night was easy, comfortable. I found myself laughing, really laughing, at a ridiculous drawing someone attempted during Pictionary. I leaned against the kitchen counter again, the same way I had weeks earlier, but this time it felt different, lighter, natural. At one point, James was telling a story about accidentally microwaving aluminum foil as a teenager. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my drink. When the noise died down, he turned to me and said, quietly, "It's good to see you happy." I met his eyes, realizing suddenly that for the first time in a long while, I was. But I didn't mistake his warmth for romance. I didn't project anything onto it. I didn't build fantasies or futures in my head. This time I was grounded, rooted, safe in myself. Still, his kindness mattered. A few days later, Evan messaged, "Girls graduated from their spring reading program today. They wanted to show you." He sent a photo of Maddie holding a certificate with glitter stickers and Harper wearing a handmade paper crown that read, "Reading Queen." I smiled at the screen, touched in a way I couldn't quite name. "They're adorable," I texted. "They're loud," he replied. "But adorable. How's your week going?" I told him about the conference, about board game night, about how Ginger had knocked over a vase and looked proud of herself for it. He sent back, "It's really good to see you moving forward. You deserve that more than anyone I know." I stared at the message for a long second. Evan wasn't flirting. He wasn't angling for anything. He was simply someone who understood. Someone who survived, too. And there was something uniquely healing in that shared understanding. July arrived with a heat wave, the kind that made Seattle feel sticky in a way the city wasn't used to. I opened my windows and let a tiny desk fan struggle against the warmth. One evening, returning from groceries, I ran into James again. He held a bag of potting soil and 3 small plants that clearly weren't handling the heat well. "You gardening?" I asked, amused. "Attempting," he said. "Trying to keep these alive. They keep trying to die on me." Relatable. He chuckled and shifted the bag. "You need a hand with your groceries?" I hesitated, a small instinct, a reflex from months of distrust, then said, "Sure." We walked together to my apartment. He set the bags on my kitchen counter, wiping his palms on his jeans. As he turned to leave, he paused. "By the way, I'm having a few people over for a movie night next weekend. Nothing big. If you want to join." I thought back to the version of myself who hesitated at every invite, who feared even stepping into a social setting because she felt too broken, too raw, too unsure. I wasn't her anymore. "I'd like that," I said. His smile, quiet, warm, felt like sunlight after months of rain. But here's the thing. I wasn't falling in love. I wasn't rushing toward anything. I wasn't searching for healing in someone else. This wasn't a romance story. Not yet. Not for me. This was a reclamation story. Mine. A story of returning to myself after losing so much of who I was. One evening in late July, I sat on my fire escape as the sky turned lavender, watching people walk dogs and couples stroll hand in hand below. Ginger sprawled beside me, purring softly. I thought about Noah, not with pain now, but with distance, as though he were someone I once met briefly at a bus stop. I wondered if he ever thought about what he'd lost, if he ever realized the difference between what he threw away and what he chased. But it didn't matter. His story was no longer mine to carry. I was done tracing his shadow in the walls of my life. A few days later, I found myself baking lemon cake, not for anyone else, not out of tradition or obligation, but because I wanted it. The scent filled the kitchen, warm and bright. Halfway through preparing the frosting, I caught my reflection in the microwave door and realized I was smiling. Not a forced smile, not a coping smile. A real one, a soft one, a free one. In August, I met Evan and the girls for ice cream at a park. The invitation surprised me, but he insisted it wasn't weird. The girls ran in circles, sticky with chocolate, holding my hands like they'd know me forever. Evan watched them with a mixture of pride and exhaustion. "You look good," he said at one point. "Stronger. You too." When this all started, I didn't think I'd ever feel normal again. "Same." He nodded slowly. "But we do, don't we? Bit by bit." "Yeah," I said softly. "We do." The girls returned with handfuls of dandelions, placing them in my lap. Harper declared, "You're nice. You smell like flowers." I laughed, brushing her hair back. "So do you." For a moment I saw it, a tiny glimpse of what life looked like after devastation. Not perfect, not polished, but peaceful, honest, bright. By the end of summer, my apartment no longer felt like a space where betrayal had lived. It felt like mine. Fully, wholly, beautifully mine. I repainted the walls, rearranged the furnitures, bought mismatched plates I thought were fun, adopted a second cat, Bean, a grumpy gray fluffball who tolerated Ginger with great disdain. Life was not returned to normal. It was better than the version of normal I once accepted. It was mine. One night in early September, I stood again at the window, city lights flickering in the distance. A cool breeze drifted through the open glass. Ginger and Bean lounged on opposite ends of the couch. I wrapped my arms around myself, not out of sadness, but comfort. The woman who once whispered, "Please don't let this be real," in the dark now whispered, "I'm proud of you." And I meant it. I had rebuilt. I had healed. I had survived. And I had created a life that was entirely my own, beautiful in its simplicity, powerful in its freedom. I didn't need an ending filled with romance or vengeance, or new beginnings tied to someone else's presence. This was my ending, my beginning, my story, a soft, steady reclaiming of myself. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I was happy. Did that ending leave you speechless? Smash the like button. Tell me your favorite plot twist in the comments. And make sure you're subscribed. More jaw-dropping stories are coming.